Today's episode is brought to you by Andy Bovender, who is the founder of the Bovender team out of the Carolinas. Him and his team have helped more than 5,000 families. So if you have a client who's thinking about making a move to the area or from it, give them a call. Today, I sit down with Landon Nash, who is the co-founder of Cosmic Building, and he shares how they're revolutionizing the home building process. Now, I know you've heard me talk about this before, but I'm going to bring it up one more time. It's the Inner Circle group. We meet a couple times a month, and top performing agents all sit down, share best practices, and more importantly, referrals. So if you want to be added to the wait list for that group, head down to the description below. And as always, I'm your host and referral partner out of San Francisco, Shawn Kunkler. Landon, what's up, man? Thanks for doing this today.
Yeah, it's nice to see you, man. Thanks for having me.
It's good to see you. It's been a minute.
It's been a while.
Both of us started at the same boutique luxury brokerage in San Francisco, and then more recently I saw your title change on LinkedIn, and then in light of, unfortunately, the fires down in LA, I basically grabbed you and was like, hey man, I really want to get you on the podcast. What you're doing is incredible, and it seems like it could really help in this moment. If you could, and of course we're going to unpack it, but in a sentence or two, can you share who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So I'm Landon Nash. Like you said, we did start at the boutique brokerage in San Francisco. I've been in the real estate world and an agent for close to 2 decades now. Started my career at 18 in real estate down in San Diego. And then we met, that must have been 2015, 2016, something like that.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah. And so, I've sold a lot of real estate in my life. Kind of had a side project for a couple of years where I started a company focused on sustainability and supply chain efficiency in apparel, and I've always had this passion for sustainability. Through my real estate sales history, ended up meeting who's now my co-founder of Cosmic Buildings, which is a company focused on home building and building sustainable homes in a more efficient way, and bringing really the first meaningful technology to the construction industry in the last 30 years. And so I joined Cosmic in July of last year.
And what really, really genuinely struck me about the work that you're doing now is the new technology that you brought to the table that compresses time. Mm-hmm. And obviously in light of, listen, the Earth's not changing. We have these like radical things happening. Unfortunately, people are losing their homes, and now there has to be a push to house them faster, more efficiently. Yeah. What exactly, and really dumb it down for me.
Sure.
But how did you crack the nut of the time efficiency? Like, what are you guys doing that's so different?
Yeah. Prefabrication of homes is not a new thought or idea.
Sure.
That has been in the market significantly. It's probably 5 to 7 years. I think what the industry has found is that, unfortunately, it's not terribly scalable, because as a prefabrication company, or at least the ones that have existed and are existing now, they spend a lot of money on building this large factory fixed in one place that can produce, 1,000, 2,000 homes a year, which is great, and you get some efficiencies in building them in the factory. But then you are somewhat location prohibited by a 300-mile radius to where your factory is, because then you have to ship and truck all of those parts to the potential build site. The technology that we've created at Cosmic, which we feel is revolutionary, is a mobile robotic factory, which essentially fits in a small shipping container, can be delivered anywhere in the world, and this robot can build the structural panels of one home in one day.
That's
And
crazy. That's just such a wild thing to think about.
yeah.
But to give people some context, the same amount of build, the structural build, how long does it take humans to do,
Yeah, I
roughly?
mean, if you think about it, and you're doing a traditional stick build, you have the foundation built, then you have to attach the structural components and the plating to the foundation, and then you got to place every 2x4 and nail manually with a team. Obviously, the times of that can vary quite significantly depending on the build, depending on the size of the crew. But if we use a 2,000 square foot home, that can take anywhere from 3, 4 to 8 weeks to frame a home. We are, with our mobile factory, we can pump out the structural components in a day. And because they're already completed and we have this system to attach it to the foundation, your home can be framed in a couple of days.
That's wild.
Yeah. So that's version 1 of the factory. In future versions, the factory will fabricate the entire components, all of the components of the home.
Yeah.
Right now, we're doing the structural components on site. We're doing the exterior and the roof panels off site,
Okay.
which are then delivered at the right time to be placed on the home with the local crew. So, in essence, you can have the shell of a home,
Yeah.
meaning structural components, exterior panels, which include all insulation, everything required to have kind of the shell of the home done. That could be done in a couple of weeks.
That's incredible. And when you start then compounding that with you have this said container arrive, and let's say you're rebuilding an area that's heavily damaged,
Yeah.
you can put up obviously a lot more homes
Yeah.
way more efficiently, because then you can actually more efficiently use the people to do the higher level,
Yeah.
the more skilled labor, if you will.
Well, I think it's actually just a little bit of distinction. I think with our process and with our factory, we're removing some of the skilled labor needs.
Sure.
Because we're prefabricating the framing and the exterior panels, and so that part of the process is not as necessary on the ground. We're also fabricating, like our bathrooms are prefabricated in a pod. They have all the MEP already installed, so mechanical, electrical, plumbing is already installed in the bathroom and just drops in. And so the finishing work
Oh, wow.
on site is not as necessary. And so this is how we can expedite getting homes in the ground faster. We're still using a traditional process from a site work and foundation build. So all of that is pretty normal, or traditional, I should say. We are just innovating on how we can get these done more efficiently and faster and get them put in the ground faster.
That's incredible. And again, it's from just the perspective of a situation where you have an emergency where you just have to do things faster. Like, you have to expedite all aspects of the process, and in addition to the building process,
Yeah.
which then you can then get people back in the homes, which is, it's just incredible. And then from a cost perspective, having a machine running is a lot cheaper than having people. I know from a business perspective, your rent and your human resources are your 2 biggest expenses.
Yeah.
And so if you can cut that down.
Yeah, and look, we obviously didn't start this company with the idea of being a company that's going to help in disaster times.
Yeah.
We started this because I think we have really 2 missions when we started out. One was to help solve the housing crisis and the lack of housing.
Yeah.
And we can do that with our technology to be able to put homes in the ground more efficiently and more cost effective. And I think your insight on what you just mentioned with the human resources and being able to be more efficient with the human time does allow us to be a little bit more cost effective than the traditional stick builds. Our second mission was to try and decarbonize the industry. The built industry is one of the the largest contributors to carbon dioxide. And so all of our homes are sustainable homes and healthy homes. So all net zero in operation. We have enough energy production and storage to run these homes on their own. We have water recycling systems that reduce water usage at the home by 50 to 60%.
Wow.
We're only using natural materials, so there's no VOC off-gassing inside the home. We have whole house HEPA air filters and water filters. So, we're trying to create these sustainable sanctuaries for people to help with some of the climate issues that we've been having and that we're continuing to have. And I think the kind of secondary mission now, after everything that's going on with LA and quite frankly, disasters throughout the country, is I think we have the technology, the product, and the know-how to help rebuild faster, stronger, more resilient homes. We are already doing some fire rebuilds.
Really?
Yeah, in Sonoma County, from the Tubbs fire in 2017. We have 3 projects in that area currently. And we have 3 in Lahaina as well.
Oh, wow. Oh my goodness. Yeah. And I know because it's Sonoma, Napa is it's the backyard of San Francisco, and a lot of our colleagues actually have homes and properties there. I know they're super strict with codes, especially with the fire codes.
Yeah.
So
It's called the Wildland Urban Interface, WUI for short, and it is the strictest fire code in California. And going through this process and going through planning and permitting for these projects, we have found that, quite honestly and transparently, on accident, we didn't plan this when we started the company and designed our homes and our materials, but we are above WUI code with our existing materials.
Wow.
And our existing building process. And so it will help on the planning and permitting side as well, and from a speed perspective, given the know-how and the knowledge that we have in already doing this for some of the Sonoma County projects that we have.
Yeah.
Funny enough, I mean, in Palisades, they're actually not under WUI. And there's not a requirement from a fire code perspective.
That's bizarre.
And that might change now, right? We don't know how they're going to react and how they're going to mandate some of the rebuild. But I think it's only smart moving forward that we need to rethink how we're building in the areas that are going to be subject to disasters like wildfires.
Have you been completely neglecting your newsletter, social media, or any of your outbound marketing? If so, I have a solution for you. With little to no commitment, a virtual assistant can jump in and help you in those areas you just don't have the time for. For more information about hiring a virtual assistant, go ahead and follow the link in the description below. Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's unfortunately California in general is we don't get a lot of rain, and we get it in seasons. Yeah. And even though seasons we don't always get a ton. So we're either subject to earthquakes, fires, or slides.
Yeah.
And so it's like we're constantly battling these. And so I'm actually very surprised that you share that they don't have those codes yet. This is a way tangent. But when I was starting my real estate business, I remember talking to my dad who owned a business. He owned 3 businesses, and then the last business owned for a good 45 years. And I was asking him just like mentor questions, like, how'd you do this? How'd you do that? And I was asking him about business plans. And he's like, don't waste your time. Just hire really good salespeople, but don't worry too much about having this plan, because he's like, as soon as you start making sales, that's your plan. And you just have to look for opportunities within what's happening to move your business. And so as you share that you guys are making these pivots, as these needs present themselves, it's really smart business, because at the end of the day, it's about helping facilitate this thing. And if this group over here has a need, it's like we'll just navigate over into that area. And serendipitously, it sounds like you guys had the ethics to want to go that green approach and not leave a big carbon footprint, and it just kind of structured you guys for this other stuff. So I applaud you. I think what you're doing is it's unique, and doing something big in a category where you're carving a path, it's hard. And so
Yeah.
hats off.
Yeah, thank you. And I think to that point, when we launched the company, we were very focused on our ADU product, and it was I think a easier entry point into the market.
Sure.
Especially from a planning and a permitting perspective. Getting those approved is much easier, especially in California. And so that's kind of where we started. And as I came into the business and started talking to potential customers, we found very quickly that I think because of the product that we're offering and the technology and the process that comes with it, we had a lot of people interested in single family homes.
Yeah.
They wanted this high-end, well-designed product for themselves and for a main home. And so we made the pivot to really focus on our single family homes sooner than we had expected when we launched the business. So I think, to your point, following where the customer needs are has been something that we've been focusing on over the last 6 to 8 months.
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge point where I think a lot of people just miss, agents in particular, is to what exactly you guys did is listen to your customer.
Yeah.
Like, if they're all saying this thing, it's like you can bludgeon them with trying to educate them, or you can just morph to the conversation that they're already having in their head. It's a far easier transition for them.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah,
I think my experience as an agent for the last 20 years prior to starting Cosmic has been instrumental in kind of implementing a sales plan for Cosmic. Listening to the customers, understanding their needs, and just providing good service.
Yeah.
Being a good agent has kind of groomed me for this new role and this new kind of opportunity.
I can totally see that. And in working with clients in the Bay Area, in San Francisco in particular, it's a very aggressive price point. Yeah. And so you have to really be on point. Like, if that service and that care is not there, they'll just call any of the other 5,999 agents in the city, and that's it. Like, you're out of business.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to kind of go back to what you were sharing earlier, it sounds like you are already working with a few families in that LA area.
We're starting to, yeah. I mean, it's been a interesting month, and I think we've been trying to figure out how we come at this from an empathetic perspective, right, and not opportunistic. It's been such a devastation and a tragedy, and so we're really trying to figure out how we communicate what our value add is. And I mean, I think we have an opportunity to help families in a number of ways, and that's really our goal, is to be able to offer the best option for them to rebuild. We are in contact with a number of families that span, what's going on. We have a couple of people that completely lost their homes that we're
awful
chatting with and helping them through this process. What we're offering to people in LA right now is a free rebuild feasibility study, which is trying to help them and connect them with professionals that span insurance, lending, and then we will look at their site, and we are actively monitoring what's going on the governmental level, and how they are thinking about the rebuild and what the steps are for phase 1 and phase 2 cleanup and debris removal, to what the fast tracking permitting process looks like. And so we're evaluating all of that. We're offering all this information to those clients for free. And we are doing architectural layouts for free, which I think is an interesting piece and something for homeowners just to be aware of. Is, in the traditional model of stick building, you need to hire a number of people to help you. You need an architect, and you need a builder, a GC. And if they're not connected, and if they don't understand the budget or what is needed in that build, you potentially could go through a number of drawings and a number of versions with that architect, which is going to cost you money every single time you have to do a revision. And so because we are an end-to-end service provider, meaning that we help the client from the day they start thinking about a project, whether it's in LA or a development project somewhere else, and we can do the architectural drawings, help through planning and permitting process, get to final permit approval, all the way to final construction. By having all of that in-house and having an understanding with the client of what they're wanting to achieve with this project, both from the building perspective and like what they want to build, but also from a budget perspective, we can, tailor that to make sure that we're meeting the client's needs and not building this beautiful dream, which is not attainable from a budget perspective. And so with our LA clients who have lost a home, we are doing the initial architectural plans and layouts for free, to make sure that we're within the realm of what they want to rebuild and what they can rebuild. Each individual situation is going to be different based off of their insurance policy, what they're going to be receiving from the insurance company. Everybody has their own financial situation. Their lender is going to play into this. And so being able to really understand the full scope of what they're dealing with, and then coming up with drawings and plans specific for them. From there, if they're interested in kind of moving forward, then we start, really nailing in kind of the next steps, putting together that full package that's going to be necessary to start the planning and permitting process. We're working with a number of families now. We're, obviously devastated in what they're going through, but excited about what we can offer them and how we help them rebuild faster, stronger, more resilient, and more cost effective.
I've never been in that situation, but I can empathize, and I can, from their perspective of just not even knowing where to turn. Like, to your point, it's like there's the lenders, the insurance companies, the architects, the contractor, and you're just like, the site cleanup. It's like you're just overwhelmed. Plus, you have the rest of your life to still manage. Like, I need clothes, I need food, I need
somewhere to live.
I need somewhere to put my head down every night and feel safe and protected. And so I think just offering that as like, hey, we can at least give you some guidance to help you through this process it's a very good thing. And it's,
oftentimes, architects are going to charge for those, initial drawings and plans. And look, that's obviously what they have to do, right? That's their business model. And there's a lot of phenomenal architects that are out there. We're just trying to kind of lighten the load a little bit and kind of get those initial ideas of layouts and plans on the table so that they can understand what they can rebuild.
Yeah. It's interesting hearing you explain it and share it. You being a real estate agent, you can tell it comes through because you're almost preempting the concerns they have and presenting a solution before they get to that next piece. Yeah. And that's very much in line with the service industry of, like, that's what we do. Like, we have to try to figure out, okay, this thing's going to go awry here. Let me make sure my client is set up in a really strong position before we get to that point. And but I can tell the way that you've processed it. Yeah. You've thought about it through the lens of service, which is really cool. It's cool to see.
Yeah. I mean, I think, as mentioned before, my experience as an agent, I think, has prepped me for kind of this next stage of my career. It's almost like going through a disclosure package, right? Like, what are the potential pitfalls that the homeowner might not know if they've never been through this before? And trying to look around corners and trying to figure out where you can help them miss those potholes and guide them to a successful sale or a successful build. I think it's really the same mentality. It's the same insight to provide the best service. And that's kind of how I'm going about it.
Which I think is brilliant, because when people know, one, that they actually have somebody who's guiding them on the road ahead, but not only that, they're steering them through around those potential pitfalls. But then they also know, okay, when this pitfall comes up, don't be shocked. It's like this normal thing that comes up in this process, but you are going to have a few options, and here are the few outcomes from those options. How would you like to proceed? And it's like having that person shepherding you through that. Yeah. I know from my experiences that alleviates a ton of stress, because I don't have to worry about, I know there's pitfalls. I'm in a dark room. I don't have a flashlight and I have no idea where they are, nor do I know how wide they are or how deep. Yeah. But when you got somebody there with you, it just changes. It changes the landscape.
Yeah. I mean, I think something that we've talked about before when we were working together as agents is, as an agent, you need to set the expectations for your clients up front. This can be a daunting process, whether you're buying a home for the first time or building a home and doing a development project for the first time, or unfortunately in the position where you have to rebuild a home that you lost. Yeah. I think the more that you can set expectations up front helps them remove that stress, right? And this is something that I told, buyers a lot, is, even though this is the biggest, oftentimes the biggest investment of your life, and that can feel stressful, my job is to set the expectations and remove that stress so that it can be an enjoyable process. And, I'm not expecting this to be an enjoyable process for people that lost their homes, because it's going to be a very emotional process.
100%.
But in that vein, I do want to try and remove as much stress as possible to help them rebuild faster and get back to a place that they can call home. Yeah. On the development side, outside of LA, where someone hasn't gone through devastation and loss, I do want it to be fun, right? Like I think this idea of developing a home or building your own home has been part of the American dream since America was founded. Yeah. And I think we've lost that opportunity over the last 50, 100 years because it's just so complex, right? There's so many different aspects that you need to evaluate. You need to find someone that can evaluate zoning, evaluate a plot of land. What can you build? What can't you build? What utilities are there? What's the topography of the site? And then you need to find an architect that can build on top of all of those constraints. And then you need to go find a builder or a contractor that can execute on the plan that the architect drew up. And there's just so many potential pitfalls there. And so it's been something that's been hard for individuals to navigate and to build their own home. Yeah. And, part of what we wanted to do when we launched this company and this innovation and technology is we want to democratize development and allow an individual to say, maybe I don't want to buy any of the existing housing stock. Maybe I want to build my own home. And so when working with clients like that, it's been a lot of fun. But I want to, provide the information necessary to people that have unfortunately lost their home to remove some of that stress.
Yeah, man, to your point, a remodel in San Francisco is minimum just to get through red tape and process is a minimum of $600,000.
Yeah.
And at minimum of 6 months, I would probably realistically say 12 months minimum just to get through red tape. Yeah. Love him or hate him, Elon Musk said he moved his company to Texas because California got to the point where there's more referees on the field than players.
Yeah.
And that's to your point about like just on a national level, that's what the building process It's daunting. And the real daunting part is it's there's so many hidden targets that you have to hit and you don't even know where they are.
Yeah.
And it's almost made to be impossible for the sake of being impossible. And then you have just crazy costs, and then you're adding carrying costs to just sitting, like, hurry up and wait. And you're like, oh geez, like I can't, like we just can't keep stalling like this. And that's where it's really interesting with what you guys are doing. You're compressing time. So it's like, yeah, you still have the red tape, but now you don't have the time being added to it during this other portion of the process. We can actually expedite that. Do you actually have stats on, and I know it's like, I know it's not a 1-to-1 ratio, but how long to complete, like, a shovel in the ground to keys in hand, side by side, using your process versus using a traditional process?
Yeah, so in terms of the overall process, we're going to be tied to some of the traditional
Sure.
timelines, planning and permitting. I think we do have an advantage in that it's all in-house, and so we are designing our home to match the building code of that area. So I think that can help a little bit, but ultimately we are going to be at the mercy of the individual county. And I mean, we've already run into this where, home build in Sonoma is going to be a much different timeline process for plans and permits than a home build in Monterey, which is on a coastal commission, which, like, I'm not joking. I was looking into a lot in Monterey, and it had the zoning, and at the end it had an S and a P. I was like, I wonder what that is. So I called the county, and it's a salamander protection zone, which came with an additional 3 months to make sure that you are protecting the salamanders in that area. So, like, it's so variable even within like a 3-hour drive, right? So we're tied to some of that, of like, we can't get around the planning and permitting process to a certain extent. Once we have plans and permits, I think I mentioned earlier, the foundation build is going to be the exact same process. We're going to look at the geotech reports. We're going to take the topographical survey and design our foundation to make sure that we're meeting all of the standards for seismic and everything else that we need to take into consideration. And that build is going to be exactly the same. Once the foundation is built, we can confidently say we're going to be at least 2 times faster in getting the home in the ground. We found that it can be as much as 3 times. Right, so we can build, from the time, and again, there's some variability in there depending on what the county is going to require from a inspection perspective through the process. But, we can build a 2,000 square foot home in 8 weeks, assuming no hiccups from the inspection side.
That's pretty quick, man.
Yeah.
That's impressive. That's hilarious, though, about the Salamander Protection Act. That's...
it's crazy. There's so many things from a zoning perspective, from a building permit perspective that you would never think about running into.
Welcome to California.
Yeah,
it reminds me. Have you ever? Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, on that point, though. I mean, I have been impressed with our build in Sonoma, and look, this was a fire-affected area. Yeah. They have responded, and there are expedited processes that they have in place for fire rebuilds. And so the planning permitting process should be pretty quick, which is nice. And on top of that, at least what they are communicating in LA is they are really, really pushing to expedite the rebuilds. And so I have been pleasantly surprised from that perspective. That even in California, it looks like there's a way to expedite the planning and permitting process.
And it really genuinely just seems like all the individual states or even federal, they just need to say, like, if there's an emergency rebuild, this is the protocol. Like, and not have the way it's set up now. It's like, oh, you get to this new area and they're like, let's create a new plan. And it's like, no, you guys should actually have a plan in place, because This isn't, as we talked about earlier, these aren't new surprises. They happen every year.
Yeah.
Like, have a plan in place.
Yeah. Well, I'm hopeful that, you know, if we can execute, and I say we as like a whole state and everybody involved with, you know, executing a rebuild, that this can be an indication of how building can, you know, happen in the future. And hopeful that, you know, maybe that removes some of the red tape and allows us to have a blueprint on how we can build and a proof point that you can build strong, resilient, sustainable homes fast.
For sure.
So, you know, obviously that the jury's out on whether this is going to help expedite that, but I am hopeful.
Yeah, and what I'm excited for you and your company is the company's still new, and you're already down to cutting it in half the time, or 2 times faster to build, almost 3.
Yeah.
And the next iteration of machines and software and technology that you're introducing, it's only gonna get better with time.
Yeah.
And so it's just, you know, stepping back and you're just looking at it objectively. Housing is absolutely a human need, and efficiency is incredibly important because there's just a ton of people that we need to house. And then when these situations come up, as they do, I mean, they continue to come up. Like the East Coast has hurricanes seasonally.
Yeah.
We have fires seasonally. There's earthquakes that are random. It's just, there's a baked in need to just get these systems and processes just expedited.
And
again,
that's on top of our existing housing crisis and housing shortage, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, that's part of the reason that, like I said earlier, that we started this company. It was hopefully to be able to help with the housing crisis and the housing shortage. By no means do we think we're going to do it all, you know, by ourselves, but we want to be a small part in being able to prove that you can build more efficiently. And I think as we get to scale, then you start to bring the pricing down and you get to be able to build more affordable housing. And so that's where we're hoping to get.
Yeah, and that all completely makes sense just from a business perspective is, you know, once the equipment gets paid for and you're able to add on and build up your inventory of machinery that improves your efficiency, then while simultaneously scaling. I'm really looking forward to just watching this grow and watching you push it to the next level. When I saw it on LinkedIn, I was like, oh man, like this is, you're genuinely doing something unique and you're cracking this nut on a completely different, from a different perspective, a different lens. What's the background of your founder? What inspired him to even go in this direction?
Yeah, he's told me he's been working on this idea for 15 years. He's a trained architect, studied at one of the best architecture schools in the world in Spain, in Barcelona, and he's also a robotics expert. So he started in academia and research.
Oh, geez.
He has a previous company that he had started, and I got introduced to him from a past client of mine who bought and sold homes with me. And he just wanted my insight on the real estate market in general. So I've been connected with him for 5 years. As he started thinking about Cosmic, we reconnected, and that was probably 3 years ago. And so I've been talking with him about this idea and this business, way before I actually came on board. But he's an amazing human being. Part of the reason that he wanted to go after this idea of the housing crisis is he grew up in Europe, and he was displaced out of his home by war. And so he lost a home as a child, and has been something that stuck with him from his early life. And this is, how he felt that he might be able to help that situation. So, you have the blend of the architecture and the robotics, and then I came in from the real estate perspective and helping shape what I felt would be a good product that would be able to serve homeowners. And so, yeah, we feel like we've got a pretty decent team.
That's really cool. I mean, his story is inspiring. How he took pain and created this whole vision for the company, and it sounds like, oh my God, like you guys are. It sounds like you're opposites, but you feel like where one stops, the other one starts, and
Yeah.
it sounds like a really great compliment.
Yeah.
That's super cool. I know you mentioned in light of obviously what's all that's happening, you're offering a free evaluation. What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
You can reach out, email or LinkedIn. My email is my name, Landon, at cosmicbuildings.com, or on LinkedIn. I don't know if you can just, if you want to put it in the show notes, you can put all my information. I'll put my cell phone in there too.
We can absolutely do that. Yeah. Just send it to me after, and I'll 100% make sure it gets added in.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate it. And look, we're happy and wanting to talk to anybody and everybody that needs our help, especially in LA. I think the more people that we can help, the more efficient we'll be. We can send 1, 2, 3 factories down there if we need to. Each of our factories can build about 200 homes a year.
Wow.
So, the more that we can, get down there and get factories down there and start pumping out homes, the faster we can rebuild them.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. So one container, you can build 200 homes in 1 year.
Yeah. And to clarify, that's the structural components, right? We're still
Correct.
doing the exterior panels, the roof panels offsite. Future versions of the factory will be all in one. Right now it's the structural components and again, that still helps us get the homes in the ground, at least 2 times faster.
Yeah, and just like in my mind, it goes to almost like an assembly line
Exactly
in my
right.
head, and it's like if you're working in an area and there's, let's say, 10 homes, this one machine is just doing this one task at volume.
Yeah, I mean, if we could get, envision like a court or a street, you had 7 homes that we were redoing, we would deliver our mobile factory to one of the sites, and the framing and the structural components of all of those homes would be done in less than 2 weeks.
Yeah. And I do have to say, on a total side note, I've seen the products that you guys put out. They're not just these boxes. Like, it's not a white box property. You sent one to me earlier, and I literally out loud was like, wow. They're super cool. And I likened it to, Eichlers are super modern, so I don't want to use the word modern, but almost like an updated, tweaked Eichler. There was like this cool minimalistic flavor to it that had the windows, but just really cool updates that weren't like hyper modern, where you look at it and you're like, oh, that's not gonna age well, and it's in 5 years is gonna be out of fad.
Yeah.
Not like that. Like very, very tastefully executed.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, as part of what drew me to the company is that I thought the designs were going to be relevant and something that people are going to want and enjoy living in and feel like it's home. We feel like we are building the future of housing, but didn't want to be so out there that people are like, what is this? We want it to be something that they can feel like is their home and comfortable and, love the design.
That's a hard, I don't think people realize when it comes to housing, it's really hard to make something feel homey, but not over personalized, where you can't imagine it being your home because it's too personal almost to somebody else. Or the other side where it's too modern and it becomes, there's a coldness that comes across, which some people resonate to, but not generally the masses.
Yeah. Well, and I think, the benefit of our building system and building in a panelized way is there are some customization aspects to this. Like what what I had sent you was just what one of our clients wanted.
Oh, I would take that one. I would just be like, dude, build me that.
Yeah. But right now our process is, we meet with the client and we have a relatively simple intake process.
Yeah.
What do you want to build? Single family home, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, single level, 2-level, general square footage, and then, some personal things like what do you like in a home? What's absolutely do you have to have? What would be nice to haves? And then I take that to our team and we produce what we feel is a good version of what they asked for within our panelized system, which we know that we can execute and deliver in the timelines that we've discussed. Yeah, there's customization to it. We have kind of our set materials that we're going to use, and I think which we found are ultra fire resistant, and so we're going to stick to those. But it gives you a whole bevy of options of typical design. I mean, we have one of our homes, the fire rebuild in Sonoma. It looks super modern. And it's what our client wanted. So we have that flexibility to produce something that the client wants and is still going to stand up to everything that we want to deliver, which are homes that are built quickly, that are stronger, resilient, and sustainable.
Yeah. It's funny. I don't know what made me think of this, but it sounds like the company's just incredibly efficient, and fast always gets like a tainted. Fast means like almost like sloppy or like fast food. Like we don't have a good. We just don't get a good feeling about it.
Right.
But it's actually not fast food originally. It was food to be delivered fast, which meant hyper efficient. It was later when the food quality actually degraded. But it sounds like what you guys are doing is it's an efficiency from end to end. Like when you work with the people, it's a more efficient process.
Yeah.
You give them the road ahead, and then when it comes to actually building it, it's efficient, but it's not fast, which also implies poor quality. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue it's probably higher quality because you're kind of taking out some of the potential of human error. I mean, I think a good analogy is the car building industry.
100%.
At one point, we had machines come in to help with the fabrication of cars, which has made it more efficient and brought the cost of cars down.
Exactly.
We haven't had any of this innovation in the construction industry. The construction industry is one of the only industries in the world that has a negative productivity curve over the last 50 years, meaning it's more inefficient to build homes now than it was 30, 50 years ago. I don't remember the exact timeline, but there's been no meaningful technology introduction into this industry. And it is kind of an assembly line for building homes and introducing a hyper efficient robot that builds the home in a more efficient with less error. And I think on that note of quality, if you go do a traditional stick build and you're building the framing of the home, it's typically 2x4s, right? We're using 2x6s, so the structures of our homes are actually stronger.
Oh wow!
And again, we're just getting these efficiencies by having this new technology and this new process.
That's interesting. That's actually a huge detail.
Yeah,
that you're using a completely higher dimension of wood. Like that changes the landscape completely.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, and some of the questions that we've had is like, what materials are you using? We made a conscious decision to use the material components that are traditional to home building, lumber specifically for the structure, because we knew that it was going to be more applicable to more counties and more building areas, and knew that it's going to be approved, right? Like rather than going and using steel, which might not be used or approved in some areas. And so, we're innovating the process, and we have future materials when it comes to, exterior panels like the cement board that we use or the charred wood, which are just fire resilient, more resistant in general to weather. But we're not trying to reinvent the wheel on everything. want to have a more efficient process to build the future of housing.
Yeah, and that totally makes sense because the infrastructure of the cities and towns, they're not. It already takes forever to get something through. Like if you have a progressive idea, it's just going to be a logistical nightmare to get that concept through. Where if you at least work within their parameters, but you pick the high end of quality, to your point, like you're halfway home. But the consumer gets something that's at the end is actually better. I do really love the analogy of the car build. Like I have a manufacturing background, so that completely makes sense to me. And it's, when something's handcrafted, it's implied there's some variance. But if it's a machine, it's like plus or minus 5,000th. Over and over and over and over. 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. It's the same things coming out on the back end. That's so fascinating. And again, I appreciate what you're doing. So much so, as you know, we kind of moved around the whole schedule. I wanted to get you in early so we can get this message out because there is just such a need right now to just help people figure out their housing situation in different parts of the U.S.
Sure.
And so, thanks for carving out your time to be here with me.
Yeah, it was fun. I appreciate you moving stuff around for us, and hopefully this resonates with some people. And obviously I know that this is going out to a lot of agents, right? And so I appreciate you kind of deviating from your typical talk about how to be a successful agent. But I hope that this will allow agents to provide some more service to clients, right?
I agree.
Obviously, I think in LA, there's going to be a lot of agents who have clients who've lost homes or need housing right now. And so I hope that this offers them the opportunity to offer value to their clients and to the wider, country, offers an opportunity for agents to have a service that they can offer to their clients to build homes. I'm on the same page with you. I mean, you've been in real estate. You understand the relationships are genuinely at the core of what we do. And if we have conversations with people and then we can help introduce them to the other right people so that they can then get what they want and need, that further insulates our business. It keeps us in that position of being a trusted advisor when they do have that situation. They're like, hey, do you have anybody to help me with this? And while I appreciate your acknowledgement of this may not be exact content, it is still a resourceful tool for the agents who are listening. So thank you. Thanks for the work that you're doing. I think it's great, and keep it up.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate it.
All right, man. That is a wrap.